Hi everyone. So I've decided to make this video to react to a very nice video I've just watched from Her Excellency Ramayad, the ambassador. She worked as ambassador of France in different countries, and she was also a government member of France during the President Nicolas Sarkozy's presidency a few years ago. She's a prominent person in Africa. We value her intellectual input in diverse subjects, and when it matters, like now, we all talking about the Russian events, how it unfolds, how the private military company Wagner suddenly turned its weapons against Putin, against the government of Russia. And she was reacting, trying to project the implication of such events happening in Russia and how they can impact the politics, impact the future of Africa. I hope this video will not be an offense to you, dear Ramayad, and I hope we will agree to disagree. I think, first of all, what I have noticed in your video, here I'm not addressing you personally, we're sharing opinions. I hope from this the light will come from the shock of ideas. Now, trying to assess the impact of what is happening in Russia, in Africa, through the spectrum or through the lens of Wagner, I think it's a little bit explaining the story, the book from the last chapter, because the historical tide of Russia and Africa start from the USSR. It's not just the Russia of Putin. Africa and Russia, what we call Russia today, the USSR, has built strong tie during the Cold War. Africa was among the non-aligned countries. Africa was with its own struggles. Like always, our struggles are our own struggles. Most of the time, the rest of the world don't care about our struggles. Africa was in the midst of its own struggles, the independence struggles, the starting of the nationalism in Africa, wanting more liberty, wanting more freedom, wanting to break the imperialism chains, which was holding it from flying out of poverty, which was preventing it from being really a sovereign country, a sovereign continent, I should have said, talking about Africa. So in that scenario, the world got caught up by the Cold War, which was basically, I'm not going to explain the Cold War here, divided the world in two. The Western camp and the communism camp. And Africa, Asia, we were lost. We were given the same choice today. Ramayad is giving us again, 63 years later, to pick or to choose between Westerns or Russia. To choose between Putin or Wagner. This is sad. This will lead Africa nowhere. If we have always to pick between the leftover, it's bringing Africa into a conflict which doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. It's far. It's not even near to the list of our interests or priority. They know what they're fighting for. It's a conflict which can be ended tomorrow, but it has become an ideological conflict. Again, the West against the communism. Though the Cold War it's already over. To make this video short, my reaction was basically to say like this: Russia has built strong ties with Africa And it haven't begun with Wagner in the Central African Republic, neither Mali, Sudan, or Libya. You can name Wagner only into those 4 places in Africa, though recently the Voice of America, in an attempt of media manipulation, have tweeted about the presence of Wagner in Eastern Congo, which was not true. Even the EU ambassador, Mr. Chatelet, had to tweet to say that there is no presence of Wagner in Eastern Congo. So they have deleted that tweet. You can see this Wagner drama in Africa has a cancer, literally eating up all the organs of that entity called Africa. It's a man-made, a manipulative approach led by the Western mainstream medias, and they know what they're doing. And thank God, Africans are not naive anymore. We know where it's leading. I'm not here pleading for the presence of Wagner, but they're trying to make something big out of something really very we can neglect. Naming 4 countries in Africa, it's not to say you can make the summer out of one sunny day or out of one rainy day to make the winter, let's say like that. It's a very manipulative approach. Wagner in Central Africa, in Mali, in the Central Republican country or Libya doesn't make Wagner anywhere in Africa. And why should Africans choose between Putin or Wagner? I believe today, 63 years after our struggles for independence, which we still have to fight to earn fully, because the political independence never led to the economical independence. We are still suffering from the imperialism, economical imperialism, statu quo, which wants Africa to remain as the place for them to come secure and source raw materials. This is what is keeping us into this poverty. We're lagging. We're the last continent yet to implement modernity. We are in the 21st century. It's sad for us. But having to self-inflict ourselves the choice between Wagner or Putin is not going to help us. Anyway, it's not going to help us on whatsoever way, because when will Africans come with their own agenda? I think this is time for us to come with our own agenda based on our own real needs and priorities. Economical priorities, political priorities, the importance, the influence of Africa. We have to remind the world that every time that's the world, the so-called world, because when they say world in their mind, it's always without Africa. Africa is mentioned when they have to talk about bad governance, poverty, and all these things, always portraying the negative aspect of Africa. That has impacted even ourselves so much that we have accepted that position of the eternal victims of others' plan and of ourselves, to the extent to self-inflict ourselves the choice between Putin and Wagner. Why should we pick between Putin and Wagner? Instead of that, we have to come with our own plan. We're controlling the raw materials. Today, they're talking about the energetic transition. Where is it coming from, that energetic transition? The raw materials are African. To come up with the automotive industry, that Dunlop had to create the rubber tire. Where was the rubber coming from? From Congo, from the monstrosity the King Leopold II of Belgium, we have fueled the world economy. We are still fueling the world economy today with our copper, with our lithium, with our tungsten, coltan, all these things. A country like France, without the raw materials coming from Niger, coming from Mali, they will not even light up a bulb, because they depend on the nuclear power plants to generate electricity for the industry and for everything. This aspect of Africa is always kept in silence. They want to present another aspect of us. We cannot blame them, because we're not talking about our history. We've given them the right to talk about us, about our history. So they're writing the book as it pleases them. I think it's time for us to come with our own agenda, put forward our needs. Today, the Arabs have organized themselves with one resource. Look how the oil crude has fueled the Arab world success. We're talking about countries like the Emirat Arab Unis. We're talking about Egypt, Libya, before the collapse, mainly due to the Western world interventionism, or let's call it simply imperialism. But this country was one of the fine countries in Africa, if not the finest country. Libya, they've destroyed it. Let's talk about another Africa that can unite. If it's so hard to unite the whole Africa, let's start somewhere. You know, today Europe is the biggest economical market in the world. But Europe started with a few countries around one resource, coal. The Union of the Coal Producer of Europe, I think 6 or 11 countries made that a huge continental supranational organization, which is the first economical market of the world today. Africa can do it. You take a country like Angola, the DRC, Congo, which is my country, Zambia. Put only those 3 countries together, we can make the biggest union of copper producer in the world. We're controlling copper production. No country in the world, no place can beat us on the production of copper in terms of quality, good purity, good concentration, and then we control the price, as the OPEP did. We can do it. And from there, everything will unfold. We can create the real African Union based on interest, based on market value and political influence, not an union based on nothing like what we have today we call the UA, Union Africaine. It's something to abolish because it serves for no purpose. Let's start small like Europe did. And from that example I gave, there's so many of them, so many ways we can go. But the most sustainable is the one which will unite 3 countries in, for instance, excuse me, DRC, Angola, Zambia, around one resource, copper. We're talking about the sustainability, renewable energy, which is driven today by the electric vehicles. But those electrical vehicles need 3 times the amount of copper than a normal car. Most of the time when we're talking about EVs, we just look at the batteries. That's secondary, though we can still play a big role into the battery industry. But that's secondary. Let's talk about copper. Without copper, you can give them all the lithium you want. They won't make electrical cars because those cars need 3 times the amount of copper. Let's put together DRC. Let's put together Angola and Zambia. Let's create a union around that resource. Let's control the price, the market. Let's dictate to the world the supply chain around that good, around that resource, we will create millions of work, we will create wealth, we will grow in terms of influence in the world, and they will start respecting Africa. We don't have to keep following what they live. They give the hand to us as choices. Putin or Wagner or UN bases in the corner of Africa, Wagner or French interventionism in Mali or Burkina Faso. No, we can make our own agenda. It's time to think based on our own plan, priorities. I hope this one was just a small reaction, and I hope next time there will be plenty of time and opportunities for us to sit around and think about how to get our beautiful continent out of this mess. God bless you. God bless Africa. Bye.